After the shock announcement that Jurgen Klopp will be leaving Liverpool at the end of the season, there has been a lot of speculation and discussion on who will be the beloved German's replacement. Former Liverpool legend and current Bayer Levekusen manager Xabi Alonso seems to be that front runner and odds-on favourite to take the reins come the end of the year. So in this video I want to delve into the Spaniard's young managerial tenure so far, his tactical philosophy, and how he's shaped Leverkusen to become one of the most dominant teams in Europe this season. Considering how dominant and aesthetically pleasing this Leverkusen team is, it's hard to grasp that the Spaniard is only at the very beginning of his managerial career. After briefly coaching Real Madrid's under-14s whilst obtaining his coaching badges, Alonso's first management appointment was for Real Sociedad's reserve team, who played in the Segunda Division B, or the third tier of Spanish football. Much like his professional playing career, Alonso's decision-making intelligence is very apparent, so to take his time and make the correct decisions from the get-go was very good thinking. We've seen a couple of midfield greats in the past kind of dive into very prominent roles that come with a lot of pressure, whilst not having that previous coaching experience. The likes of Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard instantly come to mind, two midfield greats with stupid amounts of experience on the pitch themselves, but evidently lack that experience and ability to lead their own team successfully, which consequently tarnished both of their managerial careers right from the start. In the case of Alonso, he started from the bottom to gain that level of experience, and as a result of his excellent years at Sociedad, earned his move to Leverkusen, which I feel like is very important and a kind of testament to his character. We've seen it with the two Englishmen previously mentioned, but also with the likes of Xavi at Barcelona. Regardless of how that managerial appointment actually goes, they've been given that chance because of their name and reputation as a player, rather than earning that position through hard work and previous coaching experience. And don't get me wrong, this isn't a dig at any of them by any means, but I personally believe there is a process that needs to be followed, and evidently appointing a former player just because of their status with very little coaching honours will probably only lead to one thing. Anyway, the appointment of Xabi Alonso was a very interesting one following the sacking of former Leverkusen manager Gerardo Seoane. After taking just 5 points in their first 8 league games, sitting one place above rock bottom, the Swiss coach was sacked after Leverkusen's 2-0 defeat to Porto in the Champions League, with Alonso taking the reins the same day. Just 3 days after his appointment, the Black and Reds would absolutely batter Schalke 4-0, but it did take some time for Alonso to settle into his new role in Germany. After the horrible start to the season, Leverkusen still finished 6th in the Bundesliga, and although that was 3 places lower than the previous year, things look very positive for Xabi Alonso going into his first full season for Leverkusen. Bayer Leverkusen's impressive run this season has been well documented by now, with Xabi Alonso's men remaining the only club in Europe's top 5 leagues yet to be beaten in the league, with 16 wins and just 4 draws in 20 games. In those 20 fixtures, they have scored a staggering 52 goals, whilst only conceding 14, which means they sit third in European leagues for goals difference, narrowly behind rivals Bayern Munich and Scudetto chasing Inter Milan. Just for a bit of context, their 2.6 goals per game is currently a better average than both Pep Guardiola's Man City and Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool sides in the 18-19 season, when he finished on 98 and 97 points respectively, which shows just how efficient they are at scoring goals for fun. So how has Xabi Alonso completely revolutionised this team, put them in pole position to win Leverkusen their first Bundesliga title in the club's history? Well, Alonso has experimented with several formations across his time in both Spain and Germany, and after using the likes of the 3-4-3 and the 4-2-3-1, the Spaniard found success utilising the 3-4-2-1 effectively. Now, the former and the latter on paper might look almost identical, but there was a significant amount of tactical differences between the two. He predominantly used the 3-4-3 during his final year at Sociedad and in the early phases of his time at Leverkusen, before transitioning into the setup that we see today. His old approach in the final third was a lot more direct in terms of chance creation, coming from the interchanging front three, who'd make penetrative central movements from wider angles, and he was a lot more emphasis on direct sequences of play to get the ball to the likes of Patrick Schick, Amin Adli and Moussa Diaby. However, this season we've seen a lot more of a methodical approach, with more intricacy and triangular passing patterns taking prominence. So what are Alonso's principles of play, and what tactics does he employ to transition a ball from the defensive to midfield attacking thirds? Leverkusen ranked first in the Bundesliga and third in Europe for possession this season, with an average of 62.5%, meaning their first phase of play is very influential in implementing Alonso's heavy possession-based strategy. Although Leverkusen set up in a 3-4-2-1, there is a lot more emphasis towards positional importance within patterns of play, as opposed to a more rigid structure, and this can be seen in the very first sequences of play. The initial phase of build-up play would see Alonso's men transition into a back four, with Alex Grimaldo dropping deeper on that left-hand side, and Adil and Kosunu drifting into that space typically occupied by the right back. The backline would be supported by a midfield two of Granit Xhaka and Ezekiel Palacios, who would find space between the lines to create that numerical superiority and a variety of passing options to progress the ball out of the defensive shape. The defensive patterns of play though are heavily influenced by the opposition's pressing approach. If the other team only press with a couple of players, Leverkusen simply apply more defensive width to create more space and larger passing angles, with that numerical advantage making it easy to play quick and interchanging passes to progress the ball forward. If the other team commit to a high volume press, the goalkeeper can just play a long ball to either the centre forward or number 10s, as their job would be to pin whoever's left of the opposition's defensive line. One perfect example of this is Leverkusen's 3-0 win over Frankfurt. For the black and red's third goal, Frankfurt would apply a very high and aggressive press, leaving Victor Boniface in 1v1 isolation against the singular defender, allowing him to control the 45-yard ball by Lucas Hiradehi and instantly put Florian Wirtz through on goal. This example also highlights Leverkusen's intentions with the ball in their half. Despite ranking first in the Bundesliga this season for total touches, they actually rank 17th for touches in their defensive third, showing Alonso's desire to transition a ball as quickly as possible into the midfield and attacking third, where the majority of the possession takes place. I mentioned triangular sequences of play earlier, and the most prominent one is that of the combination of Tapsoba, Xhaka, Grimaldo and Wirtz on that left-hand side, with each of the four players amongst Leverkusen's top 5 players for touches and progressive passes per 90 this season. Tapsoba, Xhaka and Wirtz in particular all rank in the top 3% of players in their respective positions in Europe for progressive passes per 90, showing just how disciplined and direct they are to advance the ball. One player who I've not even mentioned, who is absolutely vital to the way Leverkusen play, is that of Jeremy Frimpong. Originally starting as that right wing back, Frimpong's main role is to find space in behind the opposition's defensive line, using his speed and agility to break through the lines. His job is to effectively stay as wide as possible on that right hand side, and this is why Xabi Alonso's men predominantly play down the left-hand side. Putting it simply, the ideology here is to shift the opposition's shape to allow more space and time for Frimpong to run into. The use of Jonas Hoffmann as that narrow right-sided 10 allows for 2v1 isolation of the opposition's left-back if the transition is quick enough, which highlights why Leverkusen play so direct to get the ball into the midfield zones to set up that sequence. Because of this, the Dutchman unsurprisingly ranks first in the squad for progressive passes received, but his importance and brilliance is showcased when you compare his stats to other fullbacks in Europe. To outline just how good of a player the 23-year-old actually is, I want to quickly touch on his stats. He ranks in the top 1% of fullbacks in Europe's top 5 leagues for non-penalty expected goals and assists, progressive carries, carries into the final third, and carries into the penalty box, with him also ranking in the top 2% of that same player pool for attempted take-ons and successful take-ons per 90. I think comparing him to other fullbacks within these metrics is almost unfair, because he pretty much operates as an out-and-out right winger, often been the most forward player in his team. His current season's heat map is almost identical to the likes of Bukayo Saka and Leon Bailey, which is incredible, and this is just one element to Alonso's attacking philosophy. The Spaniards' foundations are built on possession and congregating the attacking zones to overload and utilise their numbers to create attacking space. In settled possession, Leverkusen transition into a 3-2-5 shape, which is something we've seen with Pep Guardiola's City side and in recent memory Jurgen Klopp's Liverpool. The transition from the 3-4-2-1 to the 3-2-5 allows for Alonso to have that numerical superiority in each of the phases of play and create that unpredictability when it comes to aggressive options. Victor Boniface has been used as that singular centre forward who often pins the centre half's back whilst looking to either drop deep into space or make runs into the channel. The two number 10s drift into central zones in the half space to allow the isolation of the fullbacks mentioned earlier. Drifting into these half spaces shortens the width of the opposition's defensive line, allowing for both Grimaldo and Frimpong as the wing-backs to make aggressive runs into the penalty area. We know just how much of a superstar Florian Wirtz is, but equally his counterpart in Jonas Hoffmann has to get his flowers too, as that right-sided 10. His directness and movement in that right-hand side channel forces the defenders to make a split decision, which often opens up the necessary space and facilitates Frimpong's advanced movements into the attacking third. The beauty of Alonso's attacking philosophy though is the seamless interchangement between the front 3 or 5. Like I previously mentioned at the start, Alonso's 3-4-3 setup in his Real Sociedad days were a lot more rigid in structure, opting for a more direct approach. However, this new tactical structure allows his players to attack with a lot more creativity and freedom, The use of the overload and wider angles isn't something we often see utilised with a singular striker, but Boniface has that freedom to drift into wider angles to drag play out of central zones, allowing the likes of Verts or the wing-backs to exploit vacated space when making diagonal runs into the 18-yard box. What I love about Alonso's attacking philosophy is the combined efforts and discipline of the entire team. You clearly have talismanic players in their ranks, but there isn't an over-reliance of one or two specific players like we see across other European teams. Alonso frequently rotates his team selection, and the consequences are almost non-existent. Only Alex Grimaldo has started every league game so far, yet any team changes made haven't really resulted in a significant loss of performance. One prime example of this is Victor Boniface. The Nigerian started the first 15 league games for Leverkusen, scoring 9 goals and providing 6 assists, and deservedly winning the Bundesliga Player of the Month award in August. However, he's not started the last 5 games through injury, yet Leverkusen have still managed to pick up 13 points from a possible 15. All in all, Xabi Alonso is still at the very beginning of his managerial career, but he's already made an incredible impact on the game, and there's no doubt in my mind that he'll eventually go on to become one of the best managers in the world. His game management, IQ and tactical philosophy is already years ahead of someone who's only been a coach for a couple of years, and his talent identification has been something a lot of established managers need to take note on. This brings us on to his links to become Jurgen Klopp's successor at Liverpool at the end of the season. It's been well documented by almost everyone at this point, but is it actually a possibility? To be honest, yeah, I do really think so. I do think it's kind of lazy journalism to put his name forward just because of his ties to Liverpool, but I genuinely see it as a possibility. For me, one of the biggest problems in replacing Klopp is replacing the man himself. We all know just how influential Klopp has been at Liverpool, completely revolutionising a fallen giant to become one of the most feared teams in Europe, but it cuts deeper than that for me. Taking away Klopp's success and legacy at Liverpool in terms of achievement, you've got a man who's universally adored by every single Liverpool fan in the world. He's the longest serving Premier League manager at this current point in time for a reason, and his announcement saying he'd be leaving at the end of the season literally sent shockwaves around the footballing world. He's a man that you genuinely care about, and his relationship with his players, staff and fan base is something you don't always see in football. Like, it sounds a bit embarrassing, but I'll admit I was a football fan before I was a Liverpool fan. Obviously some of my family and closest mates are Liverpool fans, but I became fascinated and completely obsessed with football at a time when Liverpool were finishing mid-table. Now, I know a lot of people aren't going to, naturally like that, but for me, Jurgen Klopp made me fall in love with Liverpool, and I'm not afraid to admit that. His passion and energetic nature is contagious, and that's without even talking about how he created one of the best teams in the world. So how do you even move on from someone like that? For me, my first target would be Xabi Alonso. He's obviously an ex-Liverpool legend, but an important factor to that is it's someone you can actually put your faith and belief into. It's important to get a coach in that can obviously play good football and win trophies, but equally it's important to actually care about that person. For me, you can't just go from someone as loved as Jurgen Klopp to a manager you don't really know much of or give a shit about, however good of a coach they are. Xabi Alonso is obviously a risk, but he's already showcased that he's more than capable of coaching a very good team with endless potential. And yet it might sound a bit stupid to some fans, but I'd rather get Alonso in and win absolutely nothing for a year or two whilst he finds his feet and rebuilds the club than over a manager that I don't necessarily have that emotional connection to, but might win a trophy or two. I understand the Premier League is completely different to that of the Bundesliga, but Alonso has already showed his ability to not only play very impressive and aesthetically pleasing football, but to also rebuild a team within a certain budget. He lost Moussa Diaby to Aston Villa in the summer, which was, one of Leverkusen's best players, and he used that money to bring in the likes of Boniface, Xhaka, Hoffman, Grimaldo, Nathan Tella, who have all been instrumental to his style of play this season. Not only that too, he lost the likes of Mitchell Baker, Kerem Demirbe, who I think went somewhere in Turkey, and he managed to do all this while significantly improving his team with very limited funds. So yeah, in theory, he does have all the tools to be a suitable Klopp successor, despite obviously being a calculated risk. So yeah, to quickly finish, I want to touch on Liverpool's current team and talk about the current profiles we have that could fit Alonso's immediate philosophy. To be honest, there's not many like-for-like profiles between Jurgen Klopp and Xabi Alonso's men. Whilst in settled possession, both teams transition to resemble a 3-2-5 formation, and both teams do employ a high-intensity gegenpressing system to win the ball back, but player profile-wise there's not many other concrete similarities. Now, there are certain players in the current Liverpool squad that would easily be able to fit Alonso's system, but I think the potential appointment of the Spaniard would possibly see a significant amount of restructuring in terms of squad selection. Starting off with the back line, Leverkusen play a 3 at the back, so naturally play 3 centre-backs with 2 wing-backs for support. Now, at the minute, Liverpool have also kind of played with 3 centre-backs for the majority of the season, but that's been in the back 4. Joe Gomez has filled the injury void at both left and right back, whilst Alisson, Van Dijk and Konate would slot straight into Alonso's hypothetical Liverpool team. There is a clear lack of a left-sided central defender profile seen at Leverkusen in Edmund Tapsoba and Pierre Hincapie. I'm sure Gomez could probably do a job, but naturally you want that left-sided progressive passer that's comfortable in possession in that role. The midfield areas are probably the biggest differences between the two teams. The wing-backs who operate in attacking areas for Leverkusen are both very comfortable in transition and are instrumental in how Xabi Alonso's team progress the ball between the build-up and attacking phases. Now, there was once a time a couple of seasons ago where Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold were the best full-back partnership in Europe in terms of bombing up the pitch and creating goal-scoring opportunities, and their league assist numbers speak for themselves. However, although both Grimaldo and Frimpong are instrumental to creating those goal-scoring opportunities from wide themselves, they have completely different profiles to that of the Liverpool lads. Between the two, they have a combined 27 goals and assists this season, which means they've scored or directly set up over 50% of Leverkusen's goals so far between them. But they are completely different profiles to Robbo and Trent, despite all 4 being proven creators in the full-back areas. Robertson and Grimaldo share some qualities, although Grimaldo is a lot more comfortable in possessional play, whereas Trent and Frimpong couldn't be any more different in terms of play style. I mentioned before how the Dutchman pretty much plays as a right winger, receiving the most progressive passes per 90 in the Leverkusen squad, whereas Trent acts as that sitter and dictates play with his excellent range and variety of passes. Although in his early days he used to be an overlapping attacking fullback, Liverpool's 66 is at his best when he's got the time and space to pick out those long diagonal balls and direct progressive passes into the forward players. I think if Alonso took over Liverpool tomorrow, let's say, to make the most out of his team, I'd probably have to flip the roles of the fullbacks around and have Trent in the Grimaldo role and Robbo or someone like Luis Diaz in the Frimpong role, as mad as that might sound. Moving into the central midfielders, I wouldn't say Liverpool's crop of players are like that of Granit Xhaka or Ezequiel Palacios, but with some coaching, I could see the likes of Alexis McAllister, Curtis Jones, or even Ryan Gravenberch having some success within those positions. The 2 Leverkusen number 6s have excellent movement and availability to find space to receive passes. Between the 2 of them, they average over 200 passes per 90, ranking in the 99th percentile for passes attempted from midfielders in the Bundesliga this season. I think the signing of Granit Xhaka was ridiculous business by Leverkusen. He's been the definition of a high-volume passer within that side, with that ability to make line-splitting balls over the top, whereas Palacios is a bit more mobile and acts more as that aggressor in terms of winning the ball back. Considering Leverkusen average like the 3rd most possession in Europe, Palacios actually ranks in the top 2% of midfielders across the top 5 leagues for tackles and interceptions with over 5 per 90, which is incredible really. Finishing the comparison with the front 3, this is probably one of the more controversial shouts out the lot. Like I previously mentioned, Xabi Alonso uses a singular target man in Victor Boniface, and 2 number 10s in behind that play quite centrally. I think Darwin Núñez is a like-for-like replacement up top in terms of his constant movement and determination to find space between the lines. Obviously his ability to actually finish the ball is less than ideal, but he's got all the fundamentals. He's got elite movement, a strong and tall frame, with a natural tendency to drift into the left-hand side channel, and it's very similar to how Boniface operates. I think Dominic Szoboszlai is a natural fit too, playing as a proper number 10. He of course plays on the right side of a midfield 3 for Liverpool now, but predominantly played as either a left or right sided 10 for both RB Leipzig and the Hungarian national team. So this is one of the more natural fits for Alonso. And that of course just leaves one more number 10, and this is where the controversial take is. On paper, in terms of a natural fit for that profile that we currently have, I actually think Cody Gakpo would flourish as that left-sided number 10, which of course leaves Diogo Jota and Mo Salah out. Now, Szoboszlai and Gakpo can play either side, so there's an ability to interchange the 2 on that left-hand side and try implement Salah somewhere on the right. I think a lot of people kind of recognise that Salah isn't really a right winger. He's always been more of an inside forward, and recently we have seen him kind of give up on those goal scoring numbers and act as more of a creative hub with Klopp's change to the 3-2-5. The tactical change has pushed Salah a lot wider, which has had a negative impact on his actual goal involvement numbers. Whilst he's still got 22 goals and assists in 20 league games this season, he looks nowhere near as effective in a final third as he used to be, and I'm honestly not sure if he'd actually benefit or not in that number 10 role. Jonas Hoffman's heat map kind of resembles Salah's 2021 season's heat map, and we all know just how lethal he can be when cutting inside into the half space on his left foot, but it's not as simple as that. Since his move to Liverpool, Salah has been undeniably one of the best players in the league, and he probably would be effective in that role, don't get me wrong, but I don't want to just be naive and just claim he'd take to it like a duck to water, because that's just not the case. In that role for Leverkusen, Hoffman averages 49 successful passes per 90, which is over 20 more than Salah, and not only that, he has a higher passing accuracy than the Egyptian too, despite a significantly higher volume of attempted passes. The German also averages more key passes, expected assists, and accurate crosses per 90, so it would take some major adjustments. All this is obviously just a hypothetical anyway, but on his day Salah is one of the best players in the world, so I'm sure he'll eventually adapt to that role, given the opportunity. So to summarise the squad comparisons, if Alonso was to be Klopp's successor, his priority would be to sign a left-footed, left-sided centre-back, similar to what he has at Leverkusen in Hinkeby or Tapsoba, preferably an out-and-out number 6 that is a high-volume progressive passer and is comfortable in possession, and ideally a left or right attacking wing-back that has a similar profile to that of Jeremy Frimpong. So yeah, for me, Xabi Alonso should be Liverpool's priority appointment to replace Jurgen Klopp, but the world of football is a forever changing entity with a plethora of unknowns, so who knows what's next? Time will tell. If you're new to the channel and like this sort of video concept, feel free to hit that subscribe button. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Can you see Xabi Alonso at Liverpool next season? And if not, who do you think should take over Jurgen Klopp? I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you very soon.